I'm not a huge Lil Uzi fan. I've already said this, but I've always thought Uzi is great and inconsistent at the same time. Uzi's greatest songs are some of my favorite tracks, but his worst songs just suck. Anyway, Lil Uzi is a really popular artist, like one of the most streamed hip-hop artists of this generation. Uzi has a huge fan base, but they haven't barely dropped in years, and a lot of people like me were saying that if the Pink Tape wasn't great, Uzi would basically lose that legendary cult status and fall off for good. Because the wait for the Pink Tape was crazy. It's been 3.5 years since Uzi's last album. And then a lot of the music Uzi's put out since Eternal Atake has been pretty bad. Just low effort, not memorable, not that creative. And there were so many questions around the Pink Tape, what it would sound like. Everyone was wondering, would the Pink Tape be a breath of fresh air in a stale industry, or would it rehash old ideas and impress nobody? Is this an album with 26 fun, exciting songs, or 8 good songs and 18 boring filler tracks that just end up making it feel even more forgettable and boring than it already was? But luckily, the Pink Tape starts extremely strong with an amazing intro track. Flooded the Face just really draws out that tension of wanting to hear what Uzi would come back with after so many years away. With that slow starting beat that just builds up, I was sitting there thinking, oh my god, he's actually back. That building tension that breaks with one of Uzi's funniest lines ever. First of all, I fuck 8 bitches a day. How could you ever say Lil Uzi gay? Which is just a perfect line to reintroduce himself to the world after years and years away from music.
Again, you're never gonna change.
Yeah, first of all, I fuck 8 bitches a day. How could you ever say Lil Uzi gay? Fuck 4 of them.
Honestly, the Pink Tape has a really strong start. The first few songs have so many memorable and catchy moments. Suicide Doors with that funny ass sample of Charleston White being ridiculously homophobic and hating on Uzi for no reason, before Uzi puts on this insane performance with a staccato, high-pitched beat with metal guitars and guttural screaming.
I don't give a fuck about none of y'all niggas. Y'all niggas try to ban me from this shit, but I came back. I do what I want. I do anything I please.
The third track though, A with Travis Scott, this is one of the worst features Travis has done in a minute, and Travis hasn't been doing good features in a minute in the first place. But the fourth track, Crush 'Em, that's another major banger. The instrumental is dark and menacing. It features Uzi trying all sorts of new vocal sounds like guttural, growling ad-libs, layered vocals, and this rage-style beat switch. It just feels like a really fun mainstream version of Whole Lotta Red. Like, I can see these songs doing what Whole Lotta Red did, but even more effectively, because it does have that metal punk theme, but it's also just a lot easier to listen to. However, this particular track, track 4, is just kind of all over the place. The chorus isn't really that memorable, so it's not something I think I'm really gonna come back to because it's just not that catchy, but I still liked the sound a lot. Amped starts off with an immediately noticeable standout sound though. There's no questions about where this song is going and what it is. It's another crazy electronic trap metal banger with a very groovy beat, and it feels like it's gonna be perfect for festivals and concerts. X2 is this fun, hyper-poppy throwback 2010s EDM pop sounding song. It features Uzi still pulling out those crazy screaming ad-libs behind a melodic pop sounding track. I think it's a more upbeat, fun version of the few songs right before it, and this is all good, but the question starts to set into me. Okay, we're 6-7 songs in. Can Uzi really keep this high energy going for another 20 songs? And unfortunately, the answer is basically no. Died and Came Back is a pretty fun song. I think Uzi's flow, though, is a little drony, it's a little samey, but it's kind of made up for with the fun organs and the synths in the background. I just don't think I would listen to this that many times without Uzi really doing anything unique. Spin Again features more growling and screaming, but Uzi's flow is once again pretty slow. This track is also really short. It's like 1 minute long, and it just feels like a throwaway that Uzi kept in because of the funny, topical Ice Spice lyric. But it's just that doesn't make it worth the time. It's a 1.5 minute long song that's only there because he raps about Ice Spice for 5 seconds. That Fire is another short song that sounds more or less identical to the 3 songs before it. There's a dancey electronic trap beat, there's screaming, growling ad-libs, but Uzi's flow is just kind of like methodical and almost boring. I'm kind of sad to say, I just can't even really distinguish what makes these middle songs unique or different from each other. I think it's a cool sound. This is a good idea with the dancey punk trap beats, but these are like 4 or 5 songs in a row where Uzi just sounds the exact same and says the same exact things, and it got old kind of quickly. But it does kind of start to switch up in the middle. Endless Fashion with Nicki Minaj is kind of a halfway point creatively. At least the sound is different. It feels like a calm, floaty track with relaxed flows from Uzi and Nicki. But honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Nicki Minaj, and I think that she didn't really bring anything that unique or interesting to this track. The way that they kind of interpolate the flow from I'm Blue by Eiffel 65, it just makes the song sound awkward, and it doesn't hit the way that I thought it would.
Hey yo, even if my name was Natalie Nunny, bitches still couldn't chin check me. That spirit to Chanel, they ain't nothing to see, bitches want to.
Mama, I'm Sorry is another song that doesn't really hit like it should for me. I think it's supposed to feel dreamy and druggy, but it doesn't really feel that raw or rough to match that atmosphere. However, I really do think the production on the second half of the song is beautiful, but it's just a little weird that Uzi is rapping these dark and demented lyrics about drug addiction when it doesn't really feel like his flow matches that energy at all. All Alone has a really fun and catchy beat, which I loved a lot. But Nakamura, this is a really good song. I think the chorus and the singing and the energy, it feels bombastic and huge in a way that the previous few songs just didn't. I don't know what it is because it's not that different, but I think it's just a slight variation in Uzi's vocal delivery that makes the song for me. I think a lot of these songs just stay the same the whole way through, which is not a good thing at all without any peaks or valleys or song structure to carry the energy. But Nakamura has some really fun buildups and drops and just some all-out crazy singing from Uzi that makes it feel like a total high-energy banger.
Had to toughen up and gave myself a backbone. That's a fucking mess on. I'ma go hard this time, I'ma crack stone. I'm like, oh God, this time I'ma bow God. Last year I was way too friendly, now don't know ya. They said I talk too much.
Obviously, right after that, Just Wanna Rock, it's one of the most unique hit songs of the last few years with a truly fun, unique sound and beat switches. It just makes it one of the most entertaining songs I've heard in ages. It's not the best song on Pink Tape. I think there are other songs on here that could potentially be even bigger than Just Wanna Rock, but it's still one of the best songs Uzi has made in probably 6 or 7 years at this point. Fire Alarm is another Just Wanna Rock style dance song. It has tons of energy and it samples one of my favorite dance songs of all time, Stress by Justice. Uzi's vocals on this song are sick too, with the pitch down rapping and flow. It feels actually fresh and fun, and I can imagine that this is going to be great at festivals. Of course, this song does continue with the theme of deep, guttural, rasping, punk metal ad-libs, and it works perfectly with the deep, crazy, dissonant beat.
She said, can I get a burger, please? I did 3 moves in one day, so I gave my 4th girl dirty D. In her jaw, she wanna break her and edit like double D.
CS is probably the biggest meme to come out of the Pink Tape so far. It's basically a cover of Chop Suey by System of a Down, which is a classic rap metal song from the early 2000s. But sadly, it's kind of like a big summary of what the Pink Tape has felt like to this point. First of all, it's just weird to have a cover of another song on a major label studio album. But secondly, it's even weirder that Uzi just kind of like fucked it up. Look, I'm not a huge fan of rap metal. I don't love System of a Down. I'm not personally offended that this song is on the record, but it's just not that good of a cover. There's no major reinterpretation or interpolation of anything. It's just kind of like a bad version of a great song that already exists.
I don't think you trust in my self-righteous suicide.
It's nothing against Uzi personally. I wish this was a good cover. It would be really cool. It's a great idea. But it's just the way that Uzi couldn't really keep up with the flow, and it just ends up sounding really weird. He cuts himself off. He's lagging behind in the flow. It just didn't work. But the song right after it, Werewolf with Bring Me the Horizon, this ended up being a banger. Again, I've never been a fan of this style of music. Metalcore, emo, I don't even know what to call it. I personally don't really get it. But Werewolf is a really good song. The melodies in here are beautiful. Bring Me the Horizon really brought a level of creativity to this track. And it doesn't really feel like a trap rock crossover, but a genuine emo song with a gorgeous atmosphere. Even Uzi's kind of random verse sounds good. Yeah, it's a lot quieter than the rest of the vocals, but it still adds to the song. But the song right after it, Pluto to Mars, fell completely flat. It just feels like Uzi's made so many songs that sound exactly like this at this point. It's nothing new. It's nothing that great. Honestly, it's a pretty tired formula for Uzi at this point. I feel like for some odd reason, these more thoughtful, emotional songs just feel like they have the wrong beats. Like Uzi is making these upbeat pop songs, but trying to write deep, dark, personal lyrics at the same time. It just feels too happy happy in a weird middle ground that I don't really understand. There are some great ideas on here. The melodies and the beat are really nice, but it's like, how many times can I listen to this without having anything really memorable from Uzi to keep me coming back? But Patience with Don Toliver is a much better track. It actually feels forlorn, heartbroken, and dreamy in a way that Pluto to Mars just didn't. The slow, hazy beat, the minor key melodies, the really beautiful vocals from Uzi were really surprising considering how much effort he hadn't been putting in on the record so far. And overall, this just ended up being one of my favorite songs on the Pink Tape. The spacey synths are gorgeous, and it really feels like this is a song that could be a future classic.
Got me so dumb. I thought that you was just done. But when you see me, you run. I don't know why you can't stay. I'm not gonna lie, I want you. I know what I did was wrong. But I still can't just fall through.
Days Come and Go is another softer, slower song that feels like it has a retro, dreamy EDM pop feel, with Uzi again actually putting in some real effort into the flow while they deliver this really personal, heady, diary, journal style story about where their life has been for the past few years. Rehab is a similar song that has a great beat, but the end is a total switch up featuring the Japanese metal band Babymetal in a way that feels really fun, with deep distorted bass and metal guitars and Uzi screaming, "I'm not from this earth, I'm from outer space," while the Babymetal girls lay down some really fun vocals. It's a great outro track. It really wraps up the themes and motifs of the Pink Tape being heavily based in metal and alternative sounds while also being a really fun project to listen to. And there are 3 bonus tracks as well. I think the only one I'd come back to is probably Of Course, because of its really fun bouncy beat. But overall, those 3 bonus tracks are just, it's just, ugh. Ultimately, the Pink Tape is just a really long project. It is very creative. It is really fun to listen to. There is so much random, interesting stuff to enjoy on this album. But at the same time, it just feels like Uzi forgot how to make a good album. There are so many good songs on here. I'm not saying there aren't, but it's not a great project. I think the main question is, why is it so long? It's just so long. But the main question is, at the end of the day, does it even really have to be a great project? Is that what we need from Uzi? And the answer to me is no. Like, 26 songs, an hour and 30 minutes, that's way too long for any album to be great. There's no possible way a music album with that many songs would ever be a great album. Some of the songs on the Pink Tape are really good, really fun trap music in a way that it hasn't been fun in a long, long time. And not to compare it to something else, but the Pink Tape is basically a more familiar version of Whole Lotta Red. It has that same energy and those same motifs, but it's a lot less weird. I'm not saying Whole Lotta Red is bad. I think Whole Lotta Red is a beautiful experimental piece of music, but there's something to be said for the Pink Tape having the same vibe, but not being hoe-scaring music. There are tons of fun samples and interpolations that make it feel poppy and catchy. All the stuff like the Goat Ye interpolation, the Justice samples, the orchestral sounds on Died and Came Back, the production from Arca, the Babymetal, the Bring Me the Horizon features. It's different, but it's also familiar and fun. I wouldn't call the Pink Tape experimental because it really isn't that challenging to listen to in the way that Whole Lotta Red was. And you know what? Don't get mad at me for saying the Whole Lotta Red comparison, okay? Everybody knows, if you have ears, that this is a very vaguely similar album to Whole Lotta Red, and the comparison is totally fair, okay? This is the trap album that needed to be made right now. There are so many different trap artists that are just getting stale, and no one's really interested in that stuff anymore. This is the first hip-hop album that will go to #1 in 2023. That is something meaningful, okay? There are a lot of sounds on here that are creative and interesting and new, and it's what we needed. But at the same time, the Pink Tape, just by nature of being this long, it's not gonna be that great of an album, which I think is just a big problem in music in general. Every artist right now is dropping albums that are 20 to 30 songs long. That Morgan Wallen album that's been sitting at #1 for what, like months now? It's like 35 songs. And that's why albums in general just don't last that long, because there's so much bloated crap in these albums that there's nothing to really talk about. There may be tons of good songs on here, but if 30 or 40% of an album's songs are mid, the album itself as an art form, as a medium, is just not gonna matter in the future. Specifically for the Pink Tape, the worst songs on here are the ones that went away from the punk metal trap sound towards a pop trap sound. Because genuinely, it's just like Uzi didn't put that much effort into the flows and the lyrics. And again, look, Uzi is not Kendrick Lamar. Uzi is someone who makes exciting, fun, catchy songs. He's not supposed to be making To Pimp a Butterfly, where we analyze the substance of the lyrics for years after the release. But if there's nothing memorable about the production and the choruses and the melodies and the lyrics suck too, these songs are not going to be memorable. No one's going to care about them. What are we supposed to say about them if no one even remembers what they sound like? And sadly, that's the case for like 6, 7, 8, 9 songs on this project. Could have been deleted and the album would feel way more fun. It would be way easier to listen to. It would be an actually impactful album that people would talk about for months in advance. Unfortunately, there's enough forgettable music on the Pink Tape that I don't think it's going to beat the curse of hip-hop albums not being remembered or discussed more than a few weeks into the future. But at the same time, the good stuff on the Pink Tape is really good. The good stuff on here is fresh, it's new, it's creative, it's catchy, but the bad stuff is really bad. So ultimately, does the Pink Tape top Love Is Rage 2 for being the best Uzi project? For me, I don't think it does. I don't think Uzi put in enough effort to make a polished, finished product like Love Is Rage 2 was back in 2017. But it's so much better than Eternal Atake. I think it's fun and interesting enough to be one of the biggest albums that comes out this year. The Pink Tape is not a disappointment. It way beat a lot of people's expectations. It's creative, it's fresh, and I think Uzi easily beats the washed allegations because after so many years away, they really needed to come back with this kind of energy, and it's definitely going to keep them in the conversation as someone who can still make bangers, someone who can still come up with new ideas, someone who can still be making music that moves music forward. Even though the Pink Tape has some pretty boring moments, it's more than good enough to be considered a good album. It's just a shame that there's so much mid on here because we're in a time where your album isn't going to chart if it isn't full of so many songs to the point where it takes away from the overall album experience. So for me, the Pink Tape is a solid 6.5, 7 out of 10. My favorite songs are Flooded the Face, Crush 'Em, All Alone, Fire Alarm, Werewolf, Patience, The End, a bunch more. It's just a fun record. Anyway, this is Volksgeist, I'm Philip, and I hope you all enjoyed the new Lil Uzi album as much as I did. I'll see you all very soon as you're done buying the new embroidered Volksgeist shirts that are for sale with free shipping in the US right now at volksgeist.store.